Hey guys, it's John V here with PhoneArena. Shooting video is one thing on your smartphone, but it's a totally different thing when you try to edit them. It often requires patience and also a sense of storytelling to really produce something that's going to be engaging to audiences. Like most other content creators, including myself, I usually edit my videos on a PC, but now with smartphones that are capable of shooting 4K and have really impressive processors, you could do editing on the go. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to edit videos like a pro on your smartphone. Before I talk about in detail about it, I'm going to tell you what kind of phone I'm using. It's an LG V30. I'm using it primarily for a couple of reasons. First of all, you have that wide angle camera, which is great, comes in handy. And also too, because you have full manual video controls. The first thing you really have to think about is choosing the right app for editing. There are a bunch out there you could choose from. Most of them are free, thankfully. So whether you're using an Android device or an iOS one, there's a lot to choose from. Because I'm using the LG V30 for this piece, I decided to use the Cyberlink Power Director app for Android. It's incredibly powerful and versatile, especially for a smartphone app, because it has some of the features I find with traditional desktop video editing software. For example, it features things like the ability to export videos in 4K resolution. You have slow motion footage. It has support for layers, picture-in-picture overlays, a chroma key selector, and much more. To be fair though, the tips I'm covering in this piece are pretty much applicable to almost any video editing app. Next up, when you shoot video on your smartphone, you want to leverage 4K footage just because it gives you extra flexibility to do things in post. It just gives you more room to edit your videos in the actual video editing software because you can do a bunch of useful cuts to mix up the overall style. I, for one, love to crop video a lot, especially 4K because you have the extra room there with all the pixels. So basically, if you have a long shot, but there's a small section where you want to isolate and really emphasize, you can perform this crop and it's done really quick. You just select the footage, you zoom in, and there you go. And it's really nice to do these short crops with the video editing software. In Power Director, it's very simple, and I just like it because it does offer a little bit of variety. A lot of people like using color filters or some color grading to set the tone, but sometimes you gotta be very mindful about them. Obviously, when you use these color filters, they help to set the tone of your video. For example, if you want to evoke something very happy, you might want to change the color tone to be a little bit on the warmer side. And oppositely, if you're trying to evoke something that's sad, then you want to use a cooler color tone. Power Director offers a ton of different color effects. You want to experiment and choose wisely because it can be too much sometimes, and you don't want to constantly use them in each scene. I personally find it a little bit jarring when these color filters are used extensively from scene to scene, especially when they're contrasting color effects. So you just want to be mindful about that. You want to use them effectively. Watching a long piece of footage can be excruciating, so you want to splice them up to make it a little bit more dynamic. For example, if you have a scene that goes on very long, let's say over a minute, you could splice it up into different segments just to make it a little bit more upbeat. This is easily done by just splicing the video. So when you find a segment you want to cut, you use the splicing tool in Power Director to do it. And when there's something cool that happens in that video, I usually like to perform a crop. So basically, as it's cutting from one scene to the other, for that one piece that I want to really stand out, I do a crop so it zooms in a little bit more. You'd be surprised how much more engaging a video is when you splice up the footage so it's shorter. You can try to narrate each and every shot in your video, but I find it a little bit easier to use a voiceover with B-roll footage. That's basically what I'm doing now here because I am recording a voiceover, which I'll then add some B-roll footage later on in the video editing software. In Power Director, it's pretty simple too because when you have a microphone connected to your smartphone, in the app you can start recording voiceovers as the video is rolling. And once it's in the timeline, you could go ahead and add your B-roll footage. So it's pretty simple and straightforward, and you don't have to worry about being constantly in front of the camera narrating. With the Power Director app, you could add in titles, but you want to use clean looking fonts. On one hand, you can go with some default font options, but it's not going to help convince people that your video is professionally edited and produced. That's why you want to go with something that's clean looking, but more importantly, something that fits into your video's narrative. Luckily, you have a lot to choose from with the Power Director app, and you can also download some additional ones. I also like the title designer because now you can edit those fonts a little bit further. You could add a border, you could add a shadow, different colors, and you could style it to make it really stand out. And don't be afraid about using some of the animated titles that the Power Director app offers, because they do change things up a little bit. I'm a big fan of using transition effects, but you want to use them effectively. The problem I have is that people overuse these transition effects from scene to scene, and when they use different ones, it just makes everything look messy. In the timeline, when you have two clips next to one another, there's going to be an icon for a transition effect. You click that and basically you could choose which one you want. Like I said though, you want to be mindful about what you use, because you don't want to use the same ones over and over again, and you really want to leverage them when you're jumping from one scene to a totally different one. Out of all the transition effects, I use the fade one the most, just because it's effective and it doesn't make the video look tacky. However, if you want some really cool looking transition effects, I definitely recommend checking out some of the premium ones that they offer for 99 cents, like the geometric packs, just because they give your videos a very modern touch. Next up, you want to mix in slow motion footage to accentuate a point. I personally feel that this is underutilized, especially when smartphones nowadays are capable of shooting some really good looking slow motion footage. In fact, most high-end smartphones on the market can shoot video at 120 frames per second or even 240 frames per second. You might also want to shoot video in 60 frames per second at 1080p on your smartphone, because in post, you could slow down that footage by 40% in Power Director, so you have a slow motion effect when you produce a video at 24 frames per second. And if you want even more diversity, you can do a couple cool tricks with slow motion video. For example, you could have it play in its normal frame rate, slow it down for a little bit, reverse it, and then slow it back down again. Another aspect of video editing that's crucial is selecting the right music for the mood. You're not going to find a whole lot of options for music tracks through the Power Director app. I suggest checking out the YouTube audio library, because you could download a bunch for free. And you can also filter the selections, because you could choose from different types of genres, the moods, and styles. In Power Director, there's a separate layer for just music tracks, so you just add them in there. And the other things you want to be mindful about is, of course, the volume. When you're transitioning to a scene where you're talking in front of the camera, you might want to lower down the music track. And on top of that, you might want to use fades, just because they make it less jarring when you move from one scene to a new one. And the last thing I'm going to mention here is to not go overboard with the effects. There are a lot to choose from, and you might be tempted to use the same effect constantly throughout your video, but just like everything else I talked about, you want to use them effectively. So if you add in these stickers or you apply a specific color through several clips, it just softens your overall composition. It makes sense if you're using it for a particular reason, but when you do it too much, that's when it's overboard. And that is it, guys. Those are my tips on how to edit videos like a pro on your smartphone. Now I'm going to show you a video that I quickly shot using LG V30 and edited using the Power Director app. So I hope you like it, and if you guys want to learn more about any of the stuff that I talked about in this video, you can check out our website, PhoneArena.com. This is John V, signing off. Hey Google, turn off the alarm. Hey Google, turn on the lights.
You got it. Turning on 4 lights.
What is this, cat? Yeah. Next up on my agenda is the gym. I usually go after I have my coffee in the morning, preferably in the morning, more so in the afternoon, because it does get a little bit busier. And I try to stay at the most an hour.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So after the gym, it's time to eat. Cheers. Oh yes, that's succulent beer.